My name is Prakash Nagarkari. I work at the University of South Carolina, and I'm chairing this PDPI Council this year. And so I'm ready to get started, actually. And before I get started, a little bit of housekeeping. I just wanted to make sure that all the PDPIs got the email information to, how to log into this Zoom link. But some of the PDPIs were mentioning that, they may not be able to attend. And so they were going to nominate some other people like associate directors for the track one and so on. As well as there are some PIs who are going to be like, on the verge of like beginning to submit their track one, and they wanted to attend as well. So all those individuals who are currently not the PDPI of NSF track one, you are welcome to stay here and participate in the discussion and all that, but it's just that you will not be able to vote in some of the deliberations of this particular meeting. So I just wanted to make sure you are aware of that. And also, I think Dr. Sandra Richardson mentioned to me that this morning she was not able to, there was not enough time to take any calls from the PDPIs. So she will be willing to attend this meeting for the initial maybe 10 to 15 minutes and try to see whether any of the PIs have any questions to her. And I think I see her actually, and I really want to thank you, Sandra, for, I know you're extremely busy today and then for the next few days, but I really appreciate you joining the PDPI Council and giving us an opportunity to ask you some specific questions. So thank you very much. So are there any questions from the PIs to Dr. Richardson?
So while folks are thinking, thank you, Prakash, for the invitation. First of all, and I apologize everyone this morning, I didn't get a chance to just kind of engage in more of a conversation with you. And Prakash had initially invited me to join the session. And so I thought, well, I could definitely come and spend some time if folks did have questions this morning that you want to ask. But beyond that, as I said, I'll be around for the rest of the week. So feel free to engage with me anytime.
Yeah, Sandra, maybe I'll start as other people are thinking and, maybe submitting their questions. Maybe I can get started here. So I know that there are going to be sessions about the, the envisioning the future of NSF EPSCoR committee and the report and all that. But can you just give a brief, like overview of, the timeline as well as, in terms of once that report is submitted, what are the plans from the EPSCoR office to kind of implement them in terms of, getting the feedback from the PIs as well as other stakeholders, the EPSCoR stakeholders. So if you can just, give us a little bit of background information, that would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I'll say a bit, and I'll say that I don't want to steal the subcommittee's thunder because they'll do a very thorough presentation on Thursday. But we are expecting the final report draft to be presented at our next CIOS meeting. And that meeting will occur in June. And it's it's a public meeting. And so I encourage, anyone interested, certainly attend. The link is always on the CIOS website on NSF. You generally have to register in advance. But that will be an opportunity for sort of the very near final draft of the report to be shared broadly. And at that point, it sort of depends on what feedback the CIOS committee gives to the subcommittee. But presuming everything will go well and that the subcommittee is ready to finalize the report and send it to NSF, we're expecting that to happen sometime during the late summer sort of timeline. And then the work actually begins. So of course, there's lots of feedback that has already gone into the report that we'll receive. And so we expect to hear the community's voice within that actual report. And NSF, as I somewhat shared a bit this morning, there's a lot of efforts that are ongoing. And so those efforts in parallel with the Future of EPSCoR report will be used for our team to sort of roll out an implementation plan on, what, if any, changes or what the future of EPSCoR would actually look like. And so the Future of EPSCoR report, the GA audit engagement, keeping that in line with our NSF priorities, the new learning agenda and strategic plans that are out, all of those are going to be inputs that will determine, what aspects of the future of EPSCoR in terms of implementation will look like. So in terms of timeline, all of this certainly takes time. But if we get the report sometimes late summer, we're prepared certainly to hit the ground running and begin to put together an implementation plan based on all of these inputs that are going into EPSCoR future initiatives.
Okay, great. Let's see. Anybody has any questions? I think you may have to type in your question.
Brad Kinsey has his hand up, and he's been elevated to speak.
Are all participants able to directly talk and by raising the hands?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And so just to limit background noise and unnecessary interference, we've put it so it's very organized. If you raise your hand, you'll be able to be recognized to speak. And otherwise, feel free to enter questions into the Q&A located at the bottom of your Zoom window.
Okay, great. Brad, please go ahead.
Yeah, so maybe I'll start with the logistics. So I'm supposed to be taking minutes.
It'll be helpful if you just introduce yourself too.
Sure.
That'll just help me get to know folks in the jurisdictions. Thanks.
No problem. My name is Brad Kinsey. I'm the PI for New Hampshire's current track 1.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And logistically, normally these meetings are just a separate Zoom meeting where we can see everybody. Like I'm supposed to be taking the notes from this meeting and I don't know who's online for that. I don't know, would it be possible to be able to have everyone become? I guess I was just asked to join as a panelist.
Yes, so once you accept that, you should have the permissions to see the participant list, and you can also turn your video on as well.
I pushed the button to become a panelist and I got kicked off until I got back into this panel. So yeah, I don't know if it would be logistically possible so that we could all see each other. That's normally how these PI meetings go. But that's just a comment or a question if we could possibly do that. My question actually was going back to your presentation earlier, Dr. Richardson, where you had talked about for the Graduate Research Fellowship Program, apparently only 8% go to EPSCoR states. Has there ever been thought of increasing or maybe targeting some EPSCoR money towards those fellowships for students in EPSCoR jurisdictions?
Thanks, Brad, so much for the question. I think that was a part of Alicia Needler's presentation this morning. She talked a bit about GRFP. And certainly, as I'm sure and most of our colleagues that are online, we have a co-funding mechanism in EPSCoR, and certainly co-funding can be used to support efforts throughout the agency. And so we are certainly open to that in terms of co-funding efforts. I don't know if there has been any strategic planning around specifically GRFP, but I can tell you because I spent most of my NSF career in EHR, that is certainly on my radar, ways that we in EPSCoR can particularly partner with EHR, and the GRFP program is one of those that in particular are sort of on my radar to have some additional discussions around.
Thank you.
Okay, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to raise your hands.
Ganesh?
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, Dr. Richardson. Nice to meet you. I had a question about the future funding levels for Track 1 proposals. It's been a 20+ cost share for a while now, and it puts a lot of pressure on our ability to deliver certain aspects of the program, given that there are also inflation-adjusted pay rises happening in the universities to support staff members and such. can you give us an idea of what the trajectory of the funding level for track 1 is going to be when you anticipate an increase in budget perhaps in the coming years? And I should introduce myself. I'm the PI from the New Mexico EPSCoR. I'm Ganesh.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, thanks, Ganesh. Thanks for the question and thanks for the introduction. So as you know, the fiscal year 23, and I say as you know because Alicia talked a little bit about it this morning, and I probably will mention it again in my updates tomorrow. The fiscal year 23 budget request is out. Right now, we don't have a good feel for what the following fiscal years will look like in terms of the EPSCoR budget. And so I say that to say, while it may seem like we have an enormous amount of money, you know, our funding is limited to do all that we want to do in EPSCoR. In particular, as we look at new initiatives that we want to roll out in upcoming years, additional funding will certainly help us do that. And so with regard to track 1, or really any of the tracks within the program, we are constantly having discussions around funding trajectories, needs, including financial needs, if there's a need to increase budget. And I say all this to say that, again, going back to all those inputs that, I talked about earlier, that will sort of help us lay the groundwork for what the future of EPSCoR will look like. That we'll have discussion around funding as well for all of our tracks when we begin to kind of piece together all the information from all of these inputs. And so I hear you, Ganesh. This is a common comment I hear from PIs all the time. And so I don't want you to think it's falling on deaf ears. We certainly hear you. We have some constraints that we're working in, but certainly message is heard. And then I also want to say to our PIs here that certainly with additional funding, additional responsibility is also attached to that. And so while we're aware of inflation and the general need for increasing funds, we also want to, again, as collectively, as I talked about this morning, NSF has some responsibilities, jurisdictions have some responsibilities, and between all of us, I want to make sure that we're continuing to move that needle and we're continuing to make great progress. And with additional funds, we can all do some additional things to align with EPSCoR program goals.
Okay, anybody else has any questions? So Sandra, I had a quick question. As we all heard about, NSF has established a new directorate for technology innovation and partnerships. Normally, we EPSCoRians stay within our own EPSCoR programs and EPSCoR jurisdictions, and we don't think outside the box. So with the creation of such a directorate, are there any opportunities for EPSCoR states to kind of partner with non-EPSCoR, or in some way get engaged in this type of new initiatives?
Yeah, thanks, Prakash. Excellent question. And I hope you write it down or take a mental snapshot so that you can ask it verbatim tomorrow when Erwin is here busy. I'll give you my response, but then the response is absolutely yes, most definitely. But it's also a very good question to talk with the assistant director of TIP about tomorrow when he comes to visit, just to get his insight on this. I've talked with him, so I know that there are lots of opportunities. And I'm very happy you phrased the question the way you did, because I want us as a community to begin to think about pushing ourselves out of EPSCoR. We want to see you continue to be successful in EPSCoR, but we also want to see all of our jurisdictions represented in all of the NSF directorate programs and in other funding opportunities as well. And TIP, with its brand new creation and lots of programs rolling out that really have a focus on regional innovation, there's lots of opportunity for the work that we're doing in EPSCoR to complement some of the existing efforts in TIP. And so when Erwin comes tomorrow, he'll share with you some of those funding opportunities. And we've been sending a few of them out as well on our listservs so that our community is aware of them. But short answer to your question, Prakash, is absolutely. And I'm happy you're thinking about that. And I want all of our PIs to begin to think about, where do you see your jurisdiction in the TIP space? And how can you leverage your EPSCoR funded work to be successful in TIP, but also in the other RNRAs and education directorates at NSF.
Okay, great. Okay, I know we already taken almost 15 minutes of your time, and I really appreciate last minute you trying to help us answer some of our questions, and I think throughout the next few days we'll have an opportunity to talk to you as well as even after this conference is over. So I really want to thank you, Dr. Richardson, and we'll stay in touch, especially this PI Council. So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Prakash, for your leadership. It's been a joy to kind of get to know you over the last few months. So thank you, and best wishes on the rest of the PD Council meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is it possible to see everybody's videos turned on so that that's the way we are used to doing the the council business meeting, or is not possible?
Unfortunately not, Prakash.
Okay.
We set the meeting up as a webinar this time.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so maybe we'll get started and we'll call this meeting to order. And I think the first item on the agenda is the approval of the October 2021 minutes, and I think that needs I think approval and a vote. So do I hear a motion to approve the October 2021 minutes? You can unmute and say, okay, Brad.
Oh, there's a few of us here, so we'll have to be the ones that do all these. So
okay. Okay, do I hear a second?
Second, this is Michael Kunsari.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike. So all those in favor say aye.
How could I say
Aye.
aye?
Okay. Any opposed? I don't hear. So the minutes are passed. So the next item on the agenda is the COVID resilience. And I think, again, I want to thank everybody for providing the various items for the agenda. And I think it's, there are a lot of items that we need to cover today. So the first thing on the agenda there was the COVID resilience. And, one of you suggested that it will be nice to share some of the best practices, because as everybody knows that all the in-person meetings as well as training students and everything had to be canceled because of COVID. But nonetheless, I think most jurisdictions have been very innovative in terms of starting some virtual programs, and maybe once the program becomes virtual, then there are opportunities for other EPSCoR jurisdictions to participate as well. So if you all want to share some of your experiences and how you have been able to overcome some of the the issues that we had to deal with the COVID, so that we can learn from your experiences and see whether we can partner with you all, or if there are other opportunities that we can duplicate in our jurisdiction. So any thoughts on that? Yeah, I just wanted to share our own experiences in the state of South Carolina. What we did was we used to have like a junior faculty mentoring program, especially mentoring in leadership opportunities. And I think what we did was we collaborated with the INBRE program, and we had a joint session where we had like virtual sessions where that we were able to provide that kind of opportunity for providing leadership opportunities for junior faculty, and especially those who were from the minority serving institutions. That was we felt that was a significant success. So that's one of the things that we were able to accomplish during these COVID times. Brad, do you have any?
I was going to say, so there's a couple of people who have their hands raised.
Okay,
so
please.
you can see those.
Okay,
so
I don't see them, so please announce if you can.
Yeah, Matt Andrews, I don't know if you have your hand raised from something else or. maybe it's from something else.
No, I
Okay.
have no questions.
Okay. Okay. And then Reagan Calloway.
No, I don't either. It's more ineptitude trying to figure out how to work this system.
Well, then I'll just go and answer your question, Prakash. So in New Hampshire, I think the one thing we've all become much more accustomed to is Zoom meetings. And so I think that in some ways, and we're a small state, so it's not so hard for us to get together, but still there'd be 3-hour time, driving time between us and Dartmouth. So to have meetings was always a bit of a struggle. And so having Zoom meetings, obviously we are able to do, as you were describing, taking programs that maybe you did try to do in person and put them virtual, and helps to engage additional people. I think that that's very helpful. And we've also done some industrial outreach where before we would maybe have a meeting in person and felt very limited to what, who we could engage, and now we can open it up much more. So I think that's one of the ways that we've had some benefits coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah, thank you, Brad.
So Prakash, this will take some time, but I can elevate 85 people to panelist. Just in the future, if you could let us know the formatting of the session that is needed, we could have avoided this.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. We I think took it for granted, but we didn't realize that's why that this was going to be a webinar format. But yeah, definitely we'll do that. Next time we meet. Yeah.
And then Andy has his hand up.
Okay.
Kilski. Kliski. Okay, he put his hand down. So.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah. There we go.
Great. Hi, Andy Kliski, PD for Idaho State and Jurisdiction. So I think a couple of takeaways for us during COVID has certainly been absolutely an essential element of being as flexible as possible, flexible to the point of being uncomfortable. I'm talking here about things like extending seed grant deadlines, much longer, and being prepared to, pass on the similar flexibility that NSF granted to us to different parts of the program. Reconfiguring our summer research program, which typically has been outdoors and field focused, and in 2020 we had to really configure that to be much more lab and literature review and computer focused. This last summer it was possible to do outdoor stuff. So certainly ensuring flexibility and listening to what our students and faculty, the pressures that they were and have been under. Most of the faculty bore a lot of additional work in terms of reconfiguring their teaching, at the same time that we're expecting them to be able to commit to research and education elements as part of the track one I'm talking here. And so absolutely essential to listen, and wherever and whenever possible, do things differently, think outside the box. That's been a big thing for I think our experience here. Thank you.
Okay, great feedback. Any other thoughts on that? Okay, if not, Brad, are there any other hands raised? Sorry about the format of this, but
no problem. I did not see any other hands raised.
Okay, great. So
there's a hand from Nancy Simnett.
Yeah, go ahead, please, Nancy.
Sorry, that was a mistake. I didn't mean to. That was a mistake. Sorry. I wasn't meaning to raise my hand. Sorry. Still trying to figure this out like everyone.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the sustainability of track one. Specifically, for example, how the jurisdictions are dealing with the closure of track one. What are their experiences in terms of sustainability? Like, have they been able to use the same theme in order to apply for other types of center applications like MERSEC or some other type of center grants so that you can sustain the program that was started in track 1. And I can just start with my own experiences here in the state of South Carolina. I'm currently the PI on track 1, which is on material science, advanced materials. And moving forward, the next application is going to be entirely on a different theme. It's going to be on mostly kind of health informatics, and that was the topic that was selected by our state EPSCoR committee, which normally makes that selection through an external review process and all that. But the question is going to be like, we spent the last 5 years building this program, and how do you try to sustain that beyond the track 1? And again, there are recommendations that have been made to continue the track 1 for an additional 5 years, or through either a competitive process or based on the progress that was made in the track 1 by the external advisory review board and things like that. But I think some of the PIs felt like it would be nice to have a discussion about how jurisdictions are dealing with this, as well as how the jurisdictions are sustaining these type of programs by applying for additional types of center type of applications. So I'll stop there and see whether anybody would like to share their thoughts or experiences on that.
I'll just chime in and agree with what you're saying, Prakash. We're in exactly the same position where the current track 1 that I'm involved in is going to take a much different focus for the next track 1. And NSF pushes us so much for sustainability and so much for how you're going to continue on with your efforts. And that would be something of interest to me, is talking to EPSCoR about, is there possibilities? And they will always say there's opportunities for co-funding of projects, but I think how do you get to be competitive on some of the then when you're going after center level work, I think it becomes a struggle for EPSCoR states. And I think anything they can do, it'll be interesting for the TIP directorate to talk, and when they're talking about, say, regional partnerships, to make sure that they're including EPSCoR states in those regional partners. And I saw a little bit of that in some presentations earlier today, and that would be exciting.
Right. No, that's great feedback. Thank you, Brad. Mike Konsari, you normally have really good suggestions about how to extend the track 1. Your thoughts, Mike? I don't know whether Mike is on the call. Okay.
I'm here.
Sorry, this is very awkward. I don't see any of your faces. So.
Oh, you should be able to. We can see everybody now.
Oh, really? I am not able to. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, go ahead, please.
I would say that you and Brad just put your fingers on a very important problem. Mm-hmm. Something that NSF could possibly help us solve. So there are issues when the current track 1 reaches towards the end and has gained the momentum, but for whatever reason, a different project gets selected, typically by external advisories. So this is a real problem, because that you may have reached a point where you could really establish some sort of a center, but you just need a few more years to continue. And particularly now that many jurisdictions end up hiring or recruiting a lot of new faculty members as a part of their commitment to the project. So those folks come in and then 5 years gone, and they have come in, say, year 3 of the project, and then there you have it. They find out that particular theme is not going to get continued. So it is a major thing that I'm hoping that at some point NSF will be able to help with that type of sustainability. As Brad said, there are other opportunities, but likelihood of getting a MRSAC and Engineering Research Center or Science and Technology Centers, those are the types of things we need to be, and we are collectively we're applying to get those. Nonetheless, there's not many of those. So the likelihood of getting one of those centers is not guaranteed at all.
Right. Now I can see Ganesh, you have raised your hand.
Hi Prakash, nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you too.
So one of the things that's also interesting, and I've been at the job as the PI at New Mexico for all of 3 months now. So I'm learning the system as building the plane as you fly it, so to speak. But what I've noticed is as we transition from track one to the other in a state with up to 25 or so institutions, the primaries, the 3 big universities stay constant, but our ability to engage the smaller schools is not that effective because you have a certain grouping in one RII. And then as you switch to the next one and the topic changes, you're leaving behind some institutions and adding on a few more. So it feels like you're visiting these institutions once a decade or so as the topic is suitable. And that's also a bit of a concern for sustainability, is that the moment the larger universities disengage, the program dies in these smaller universities.
Yeah, no, that's very true. In fact, one of the predominantly undergraduate institutions which has been associated with the track one in the state of South Carolina for almost like the last 15 years or so is not able to participate moving forward in the new track one that we are trying to put together for the same reason, is that their research interests don't align with the new theme that we are trying to propose. So yeah, so a lot of institutions get left behind after they received significant support over the years, like 5 or 10 years. And I think one of the other drawbacks is also that some of the junior faculty who are recruited in the year 3 or 4 or 5, they just joined the program, and and now they are no longer supported, or they're no longer part of kind of a center that they were expected and excited to join. So that also is kind of a significant concern in terms of sustainability that NSF expects us to through this funding of track one. So I think these are, I think you'll hear more about this, I think, when you hear about the recommendations that have been made. I'm not supposed to disclose all the recommendations that were made, but I think this was extensively discussed at the listening sessions of the future of NSF EPSCoR, and there was a lot of concern expressed, just the way we are expressing right now, by the stakeholders, and that was, hopefully it's going to gel into a significant recommendation to the NSF in terms of, how do you sustain this track one by either extending it by another 5 years, or continuing the support for additional years, or helping establish something like a MRSAC or other types of programs for the EPSCoR jurisdiction, so that they can continue to sustain that. Okay, any other thoughts, any other questions? Okay, if not,
I'll just point to the chat. Prakash, there's a couple of good items in the chat that I captured into the meeting.
Yeah, please announce.
I don't know if Brent or Kevin want to unmute and kind of say what they've said in the chat.
Yeah, that'll be nice to hear from you guys. Unfortunately, I'm not able to see those, but
I'm Kevin Wagner. I'm with the Oklahoma NSF EPSCoR program, and I think sustainability issues isn't an issue that only the track one faces. Mm-hmm. A lot of the centers that get funding, they face those same issues as well. But I just wanted to suggest that maybe it'd be a good idea for a future meeting, maybe to get a group of panelists together, maybe of some successful centers that have made that transition from being funded by NSF into, essentially, a sustainable funding model, how they did that, what their funding sources were, and, just how they made that transition. Because I think that might be helpful for us, whether we're going after a center level grant or, whether we're working to develop our next track 1 proposals and we're talking about sustainability there. Just knowing some good practices that others have utilized to make that transition, I think would be really helpful.
Right. Well, that's great feedback, Kevin. Thank you.
I'll just point out that what I said in the chat. So we only have one PhD granting institution in our jurisdiction. And so usually we have one, maybe two, and in really rare cases, do we have 3 experts in any given area.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's our biggest limitation. So when we put in a big center grant and you need several people with depth of expertise, we don't have it. And when we make arguments to our administration to hire more depth, there are so many mouths to feed and so many areas because the legislature expects our institution to cover everything that we can't get a lot of depth in one area. So that's just a fundamental limitation, I think, and it makes it really hard for us to go after something like a center grant. In terms of sustainability, what we have had success in is, say, the core facilities that we've established with a track 1. There are many NSF grants that use those, sometimes for decades, in some cases, like our stable isotope facility. So maybe we haven't gotten more $20 million grants, but we've gotten lots of $500 to $3 million grants that go on, and those accumulate over time. And so as long as you can have a way to keep track of those, that's real sustainability. The other problem that we have is our faculty look super attractive after they're on one of these track 1s, and I have lost faculty every time we've gotten one. I have 2 co-PIs on our last one that are leaving in the next couple of weeks, and I lost a co-PI in the project before that. So I think that's another issue around sustainability, is that it's hard to keep the faculty here. Right.
Thanks, Brent, for that feedback. Just to address, Kevin, your concern about extending the track 1 beyond 5 years. NIH has idea programs, like, for example, the COBRE program, where you finish 5 years and then you submit a competitive renewal, and based on what you're proposing for the next 5 years, as well as based on the progress that you made during the previous 5 years, the NIH would then go through a review process and can fund you for another 5 years. So that means 10 years. And then based on 10 years progress, you can extend the COBRE by another 5 years. So for almost 15 years, you can get support as long as you continue to grow the research capacity, infrastructure, recruitment and mentoring junior faculty. And that seems to really work very well in really establishing, standalone type of research centers. So there is already a model at NIH, but unfortunately, NSF doesn't have that. So that's something that, the committee is, asking NSF to look into.
So Prakash, there's also a question in the Q&A. I don't know if you can see that, but it says, will
please go ahead and announce.
Yeah, so will supplemental funds be considered for EPSCoR track projects like what NSF does for base grants? I think maybe the question has to do with like REU supplements or other type of supplements. I think I might be wrong, but I think the answer is no. I think those are usually embedded within your grant already. But I do think there's opportunities. So say a conference or a workshop, I think if it's building off of something you've done, then you can go after some additional funds.
Right. No, that's correct. Any other questions in the chat? Brad, do you see anything else?
I don't see anything else.
Okay.
This is Kelly.
Yeah, hi, Kelly.
Hey, so I thought I would sit here quietly, but now I'll make a comment. So these are all great questions. I think Prakash alluded to earlier. there's a report being finalized for the NSF committee on the future of EPSCoR. If you looked at your agenda on Thursday morning, there will be a presentation on the recommendations and suggestions that the committee have put together. And so that may provide additional insight into what will be recommended and what suggestions go with the recommendations. NSF EPSCoR will have to address recommendations. They don't have to address suggestions, right? So just keeping that in mind. So there'll be a 2-hour session on Thursday. The first hour is presentation based, go over the results of the committee work. And the second hour will be in breakout rooms discussing the different recommendations and suggestions to get the feedback of folks. So I encourage everyone to attend that because we certainly want that last bit of feedback before we button up this final report and call it final.
Yeah, no, thank you, Kelly, for that. For those of you new PIs who don't know Kelly, Kelly Rush is the co-chair of the Future of NSF EPSCoR committee. And so she is the authority on what is going to be discussed. So thank you so much, Kelly. And I think it's good to know that, you know, the PIs who are kind of new and have joined recently will also have an opportunity to listen to the recommendations as well as, you know, provide additional feedback. That's going to be really great. So thank you for that. Any questions for Kelly on the future of NSF EPSCoR committee? Okay. So let's move on to the next.
But just,
sorry,
just before we do, I'd like to stick it my 2 cents on a comment was made ago. I'm Steve Welch. I'm a track 2 PI at Kansas State. The comment was made about you know, dollars building up from other grants and so forth. I've led several center proposals over the last 12 years. My track record is exactly 0 in getting one, which I don't know what that says, but I kept track on a couple of times, and generally in the 3 to 5 years following that, because of the networking and ideas, let's see, start my video. Okay. Because of the networking and ideas that emerged when we put those centers together, we would typically get anywhere from, you know, 4 to 5 million in grants just because of having competed. And so that's what I tell people now when I try to launch a big one, is that the payoff is in not necessarily getting the center proposal, but in what you can get from competing for a center proposal.
Yeah, that's great feedback. Thank you, Stephen. Any other thoughts on sustainability? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the next agenda item. That's the role of State EPSCoR Steering Committee in the governance of the Track 1. This has been a topic for one of the agenda items for the last couple of meetings, and I think Mel Eustad is going to, you know, provide some information because he, I think, was trying to lead the effort towards developing a workshop on that. And you know, because as you all know that the State EPSCoR Steering Committees vary widely from one EPSCoR jurisdiction to another. So we were thinking of, you know, trying to put together a workshop, but so far we're not been able to. So Mel, would you like to update us on the status of that, or any future directions on that?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Yeah, as you know, I think Ray is on the call here.
Yes, Ray is
from
also
Montana, and Shane Wilkinson, Maine. We after a couple of years ago, I don't remember, I think we were in West Virginia when we had a session on this, and at that time Loretta and Uma, I think it was, encouraged us to, you know, do this way back in 2001. I think there was a previous, and Mike, maybe you're the only one that participated in that. I'm not sure, but anyway, so we went through and we pretty much put a proposal together, but COVID kind of put a hold on everything because NSF wanted to make sure that it was a face-to-face meeting. And obviously there were many face-to-face NSF sponsored meetings for several years. So anyway, in the meantime, so we pretty much have the proposal written. In the meantime, and Ray can speak for himself, but Ray and I are both planning to retire. So we're probably not really in the position to be the to lead this effort at this point in time. So this is, I guess, kind of a call for, or open for discussion. If this is a workshop that people are still interested in doing, and then also if there's any volunteers, anybody who wants to kind of take the lead in trying to organize and lead this. A lot of the work has already been done in terms of putting the proposal together, but the biggest challenge would be identifying a location, dates, and et cetera. So with that, I'm gonna, I guess, open it up for questions, or Ray or Shane may have comments as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I've got about 1.5 years, so I'd be more than happy to participate. But as this thing has kind of ebbed and flowed, it probably would be nice to try to figure out how to put together a different team. I'd be happy to help and participate, though, up until September 30, 2023. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm happy to help as well as Ray, but I just think that somebody else probably needs to be the lead.
Okay.
Mel, this is Shane. You know, just the unfortunate situation this year, Maine EPSCoR losing a very senior EOD, and the national conference is obviously taking quite a lot of time to, you know, run that in November. But if it's difficult for me to give it priority in the next few months, but if it's of interest to this group, I'm happy to, you know, step back up in a larger role after the national conference in November. Yeah, I think most important is what the level of interest is within the PD Council. You know, and I'm kind of, with more experience now, 7 years in EPSCoR, I see things a little bit differently every year. And I've spent a tremendous amount of my time here in Maine in the last year kind of reforming the S&T committee, which in Maine has to be done through the governor's office. And a lot of the things that I've had to work through here in Maine probably just wouldn't be applicable to a lot of other jurisdictions. So if we go forward with this, we have to think about what the common threads are across jurisdictions. You know, what are the discussion topics that would relate to the majority of jurisdictions? That's really the fundamental question. But I am willing to step back in. I apologize for having to kind of, you know, step down to a lower role here in just the last few months, but totally happy to get re-energized here late in the year.
Okay, that's great. If any additional PIs want to join, you know, trying to lead this effort towards developing a workshop, then maybe you all can contact Mel and Reagan, maybe? Is that fine? Okay, that'll be great. And I think, you know, like the feedback I received from our own state EPSCoR steering committee is that a lot of the members do not understand precisely what is an EPSCoR program, or what is their role and what is their responsibility, and things like that. So something on the theme of, you know, trying to educate them to some extent, as well as discuss the best practices for the EPSCoR steering committee would be great, I think, because there will be, you know, significant participation from, you know, the members of the various EPSCoR steering jurisdictions, steering committee members. So, Okay, and the next item is the future meeting. I think is going to be in month of September, around September, October. That also brings me up to the, I think I sent you a flyer. In 2019, as you may recall, we had hosted the national conference in Columbia, South Carolina. And what happened was we were left with a significant amount of funding from that particular conference. And, Loretta suggested that we need to maybe organize another conference, something like, for the EOD. And so with the help of our state EPSCoR office, especially April, who works there, we have been able to put together an EOD conference that's going to be held from September 11 to 14, 2022. And we are just beginning to develop the program. So please visit that website that is sent to you in that particular flyer that I sent as an attachment. And we are also looking for speakers. There are going to be some invited speakers, but any of you or somebody in your jurisdiction who would be wonderful at giving their own experiences about participating in the EOD related activities, they're welcome to submit their abstracts and be volunteer to present, give a talk. And that's going to be held September 11 to 14, actually in Charleston, which is going to be really nice. Those of you have not seen Charleston or want to visit again, it's a really beautiful historic city. So, so I hope you all can participate in that, as well as invite other people as well. Any questions on the National EOD Conference? And I think we'll be sending more information to you all as well as we move along. Okay, any questions? Okay, if not, we have just 7 more minutes. So introduction.
There was a question. Will we hear from experiences? Will we hear the experiences from planning grant applicants, recipients?
Oh yes, I'm sorry, I missed that. Yes, so as you all know, that NSF EPSCoR office has started a new program for supporting the development of Track 1. So that's called as the planning grant for Track 1 proposal. So I think this morning we saw that maybe there are 7 or 8 jurisdictions which have received the planning grant, and they're trying to put together the next Track 1. So would anybody want to share your experiences in terms of, how is it helping you all, and how you are using those funds and things like that? Anybody?
I'll talk. Laura Jarbo, Iowa State University, new to the EPSCoR community. Yeah. We're writing a proposal right now to submit this summer. Thank you for those of you who have taken your time to give me advice. Yes, we have a planning grant. We wrote, it was not that hard to get. We're basically using it to pay our consultant. Really, and so that's where the majority of the money went. A little bit of summer salary for myself and my 2 associate directors. But yeah, we had a workshop that was virtual, so it didn't cost us anything. And yeah.
So the funds can be used towards hiring consultants and experts or people like that.
Yes.
Okay. Rob, I can see you raised your hand.
Yeah, thanks, Prakash. Rob Walker, I'm at Montana State University and a disciple of Ray Calloway. So I have been tapped as the next PD for the Track 1 proposal that will be going in later this summer. We applied for a planning grant back in January. The turnaround was maybe on the order of about maybe 4 to 6 weeks. They do turn these things around pretty quickly. And in our planning grant, we focused a lot, well, we focused on 4 primary activities. And so rather than, it sounds like what Laura mentioned, supporting consultant, we looked a little more internally and focused on 4 specific activities. And so, in the middle of winter, we did a sort of a self-study looking at capacity and infrastructure to set up how to think about our next track 1 proposal. The topic had already been selected by the Office of the Commissioner of Higher Education here. We had a face-to-face meeting at the end of March, and so that brought in people from across the state, and so we used some of the support that way. And then we had a workforce development workshop that was a hybrid meeting in late April. And so all of these resources, and then we have one more activity planned in early June for sustainability. And so we structured the proposal in such a way to identify the key areas that are critical to a track 1 proposal. And this wasn't a, let's assign writing tasks. This was a, how can we plan to address the needs and the priorities that we anticipate will be there in the FOA, working off of last year's FOA. And it has been, when set up that way, it has worked out pretty well, because in composing the proposal, it naturally lent itself to milestones and metrics, and sort of, you can go down a list now and check off boxes and make substantive progress towards planning of the proposal.
Great. Thank you, Christopher. I see Tara, you raised your hand, and Christopher after that.
Yeah, thank you.
Christopher also spoke. Yeah, go ahead, Tara.
No worries. Thank you. My name is Sarah Borland. I'm with Alaska EPSCoR, and we received a planning grant this year. We've primarily been using it to reach out to our stakeholders, and we've actually been traveling to our communities where I'll start my video, where the communities where our primary stakeholders are, and just kind of went there, talked, listened, and just kind of really making sure that the research that we're writing up for our next track 1 is in line with stakeholder needs. So it's been really valuable. We haven't found any other way to be able to do those stakeholder meetings. So we're really appreciative of the planning grant.
Okay, that's great to know. So I had a quick question about, I do see that EPSCoR program officers are to some extent engaged in this process. So, what is their role there? Like, do they provide feedback? Do they, kind of guide you through this process, or are they just, staying behind and just watching to make sure that, everything is going well? Anybody who is?
Yeah,
Christopher, yeah.
I can answer this. So hi, everyone. I'm Chris Kaliba. I'm the Associate Director of Vermont EPSCoR. And we're in the midst of writing our next track 1. We're using this as well for consultants to help with logic model development. We had a workshop on team science as well. We're using it to help us identify evaluator for the project. We have an all hands in-person meeting later this month to kind of go over the main highlights, or almost like a research slam kind of activity to get all the principals in the same room. And we've had pretty routine contact with our program officers. So what it does is it gives you an excuse to brief your program officer on the tone and tenor of what you're proposing. Now, they're very quick to say that they cannot comment on the substance of the proposal. So you're not going to get feedback on whether this is a good idea or a bad idea. But what they can do is provide overviews and guidance on specifics to be highlighted in the proposal, the importance of things like industry partnerships, et cetera, et cetera. And then once the RFP is let, we can circle back to him and ask some specific questions. We obviously already had that kind of access in prior years, but it kind of legitimizes that. And so our program officer is going to have a pretty intimate knowledge of what we're up to. We invite him to all of our major meetings. He's been able to make many of them, not all. We're video recording our all hands, and we'll be sharing that link to and with him. So I think it provides us with an excuse to give our program officers a pretty deep sense of what we're proposing, without getting any value, assertions, value judgments out of it.
Great. Thank you, Christopher. Okay, so in the interest of time, just want to kind of conclude. I wanted to introduce, in fact, my term expires. And so we have, last time we elected Fred Harris is going to be the chair of the council. And Brad Kinsley is going to be the first chair, which means I think there's going to be vacancy for a second chair. And then Mike Konsari and Mel Ustad, they were the members of the council as well, the executive council as well. So if that is correct, and if one of you want to serve as the second chair, maybe you may want to send your nominations to Fred Harris, so that he can have some sort of like an election, or if there is only one person nominated, maybe there won't even be an election. But I just wanted to update you on that. Okay, and any items for like a new business? Any things that need to be discussed? Okay. If not, I think we will adjourn the meeting. I really want to thank you all. I really enjoyed working with you all, and hope to see you all in September in South Carolina at the EOD meeting, if possible, in person. So maybe you can combine your holidays, summer vacation in South Carolina, and as well as attend the EOD meeting. Okay, thank you and bye.
Thank you, Prakash.
Bye.